Morning. Subcommittee will come to order. I want to thank our witnesses for being here today to discuss the Transition Assistance Program and the role that each one of these departments plays in helping our service members transition from being an active duty service member, productive member of the military, to a productive member of society as a civilian. I want to make sure that we adhere to our strict nonpartisan position, the spirit of this committee, and I know Mr. Pappas shares my intention there. He's a good man. As a former SEAL, I served our country for 26 years, and I have firsthand knowledge of how difficult it can be to go from being a military member to being a civilian. And I'm not kidding you, I used to wake up for like 2 years after I retired wondering where my gun was. That's not a joke. So 200,000 military personnel leave the service each year, and for many of them, it's a time for them to grow. It's also a time, that 24-month period of time is when our service members wind up committing suicide because they lose their identity, they lose their uniform, they lose their rank. The joke with the spouses are twice the husband and half the paycheck. And you all know that. I see all these old grizzly war dogs back there. You know what I'm talking about, right? Yeah. So we got to do something. The bridging mechanism has to start while we're in the service. And Mr. Baird, you're here today from the DOD, and I can't tell you how thankful I am. And I also can't tell you how pathetic it is that I have to be so thankful that you guys showed up. Check? That's how these committees work. So thank you for being here. I don't know if it's because I'm on HASC and I got your paycheck now too. I don't know. I don't care. You're here, and I appreciate it. So we went from about 25% to 52%. So that is an extraordinarily huge failure rate for the people that go to TAP. That's real. And we got everybody's fit reps here. We're going to talk about this a little bit later, fit reps and OERs and whatever. There's no block on here for participation of troops that go to TAP. It's a 175-page document. It's like 150 pages into a 175-page document from the Navy. It mentions TAP in a single sentence. So what my intention is to make this work. And I spoke to these three folks yesterday in my office in private, and I appreciate you guys showing up to do that so we could work through some things in long-form interview, not like this. But I do appreciate that, but we can do better, period. And we need to have metrics so we understand if we're doing better. And I expect that out of you. So 2019, we worked to modernize the TAP program. I think we did sort of a good job. I wasn't here at the time. Were you in Congress then? Yes. You were? Okay, so it's Mr. Pappas' fault. Just kidding. We did an okay job, and we didn't do the best job, and I get it. So we got 48% of service members that aren't beginning the process of TAP in advance. 48%, gentlemen, ladies, and that's unacceptable, and we're just going to do better. Last year I introduced the ETS Act to hold DOD accountable, and that's the department. What I've learned from being here is I can't hold a department or an office accountable, but I want to hold individual officers accountable, make sure they do not get promoted, they don't pass go, they don't get $200 if their people aren't going to TAP. We start burning these people down with shoulder boards, it'll be fixed immediately, and that is my intent. So with that, I'd like to yield to my ranking member, Mr. Pappas, for any comments he may have.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, for holding this oversight hearing on the Transition Assistance Program. Now, we know before service members leave the military, we must ensure that they are adequately prepared to rejoin civilian life. This includes having a plan for employment and housing, as well as health care and other social supports. So under normal circumstances, over 150,000 service members leave the military each year, and their ability to successfully reintegrate in civilian life depends on many factors, and the federal government is spending more than $13 billion each year to support these efforts. Without clear oversight of these programs, it's challenging to know what will give our transitioning service members the best outcomes possible. So this is an area of concern for me because the TAP data presented at this last hearing in September of 2024 indicates that DOD is struggling to comply with the transition process 1 year in advance of separating or 2 years in advance of retiring. While some might argue that this data indicates that DOD might not prioritize TAP, there's a clear connection in how service members experience their transition to veteran status on recruitment. The American Legion recently testified at the joint House and Senate VSO hearing stating that Getting this right is a matter of national security. So I expect that DoD, all agencies and partners will treat TAP as a matter of national security as well. We all need to recognize the history of TAP as it was born out of DoD's drawdown in the 1990s, and unfortunately, we face some similar economic forces today because of the administration's use of DOGE to dismantle agencies and the many services that they provide. So it shouldn't be lost on anyone that our service members will be transitioning into a more volatile economy with rising unemployment and a sinking stock market, and it will be our nation's heroes that could suffer consequences if they're not able to rely upon the support of federal agencies because of hiring freezes and firings at agencies like VA. Secretary Collins himself said to expect more cuts, but there's been no evidence from DOGE, the administration, or VA that any of these actions are being redirected to provide improved services and benefits to veterans. Rather, the opposite is happening. Our offices are inundated with calls and emails about how veteran services are being negatively impacted. In the last 2 months, citizens in my state and New Hampshire have held a number of events at our state capitol. The latest one was drawing hundreds of folks who were deeply concerned about the projected 80,000 job cuts at VA. The American public does not want to see veteran benefits and services targeted. And with all these uncertainties, support systems are absolutely necessary. So TAP is critical now more than ever. I also want to express my concern about how the administration is targeting a particular class of service members, our LGBTQ service members, and veterans, particularly the transgender community. Stating that being transgender is incompatible with military service, I believe, is an affront to our American values. And as someone from the live free or die state, I find it incomprehensible to discriminate against qualified transgender Americans who are willing and capable of serving and are being denied services that they bravely earned. So as these service members transition out of the military, I expect TAP to pay careful attention to their needs and provide them with the support that they deserve. I want to thank you again, Mr. Chairman, for your spirit of nonpartisanship on this subcommittee, continuing to look to work with you to identify ways that we can improve TAP. And with that, I yield back.
Thank you, Ranking Member Pappas. I'll now introduce our witness panel. Morgan, hey. You got a watch? You got watches in Kentucky? I love that guy. Sorry. Our first witness is Mr. Alex Baird, Director of the Defense Support Services Center at the Department of Defense. Our next witness is Mr. John Green, Acting Executive Director of Outreach, Transition, Economic Development at the Department of Veterans Affairs. Mr. Green is accompanied by Ms. Regina Yount, the Assistant Director of Outreach, Transition, Economic Development at the VA. And our final witness of this panel is Ms. Margarita Devlin, great name. Margarita Devlin, Deputy Assistant Secretary of the Department of Labor, Veterans Employment and Training. So please, I'll ask you to rise. Everybody. Please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to provide is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Okay. Thank you. You may be seated. Let the record reflect that the witnesses have answered in the affirmative. Mr. Baird, you're now recognized for 5 minutes to deliver your testimony on behalf of the Department of Defense.
Good morning, Chairman Van Orten, Ranking Member Pappas, and the distinguished members of the subcommittee. Thank you for the opportunity to discuss the Transition Assistance Program, commonly called TAP. Each of us across the department, our interagency partners, are fully committed to making TAP the best it can be. A big part of that is getting service members to TAP early and increasing the number of service members who attend one of the 4 two-day tracks. Throughout 2020 and 2021, we focused on shifting in-person TAP to delivering TAP in a 100% virtual environment. We were successful in redesigning coursework, information technology, and contract support, and ensuring service members got to TAP. Throughout that challenging period, service members continued to provide high marks concerning TAP content and delivery, but our timeliness percentage fell short of both your and our expectations. So in mid-2022, we began a series of corrective actions led by the military departments and commanders. Working together, we continue to improve TAP while putting procedures in place to increase timeliness and improve two-day track attendance. By the end of 2023, timeliness percentage doubled and two-day track attendance increased by over 7%. We haven't and won't stop there. We are confident that the military department's corrective action will produce even better results over time, and that those results will further validate our commitment to our transitioning service members. Much of our success is due to the great working relationship we have with VA, DOL, and the other members of the Transition Executive Committee. DoD, the military departments, and our interagency partners are actively involved at every level of the tech to the working groups. We are proactive in championing and implementing change and fully committed to supporting the warfighters and their families. TAP is the foundation of that support and sets the conditions for successful transition. Today, TAP is very different and far more effective than the program of 10, 5, or even 3 years ago, and provides service members more comprehensive support than at any time during our nation's history. That is possible because TAP is a commander's program, with commanders balancing national defense requirements with individual transition goals, and with results supporting readiness, transition, recruiting, retention, reserve component affiliation, and sustainment of the all-volunteer force. TAP is and will remain adaptive, focused on 3 fundamental tenets: effective counseling, service member buy-in, and meaningful support connections throughout the transition period. In closing, Mr. Chairman, I thank you and the ranking member and the other members of this committee for your outstanding, unwavering support of the men and women who proudly wear the uniform of our great nation. And sir, I'm very honored to be here with you today.
Well, again, Mr. Baird, I'm very thankful that you are here, and your written statement will be entered into the record. Mr. Green, you are now recognized for 5 minutes to deliver your testimony.
Good morning, Chairman Van Orden, Ranking Member Pappas, and distinguished members of the subcommittee. Thank you for the opportunity to discuss the current state of Transition Assistance Program, share modern efforts, and explore collaboration opportunities to improve the program. Joining me today is Regina Yount, Assistant Director from VBA's Outreach, Transition, and Economic Development Program. We appreciate your ongoing support for the nation's veterans, their families, and caregivers and survivors. As a retired Army veteran, I understand the challenges members face when leaving active duty. During this critical time, many transition and service members are at increased risk for suicide, homelessness, post-traumatic stress, and substance use disorders. Connecting veterans to the benefits and services they've earned acts to safeguard against these threats and supports their overall well-being. VA recognizes that transition begins well before a service member leaves the military and continues long after separation, making it essential for VA to stay connected with veterans throughout their lives and provide resources during critical times. While service members are still on active duty, VA leads a one-day benefits and services course as part of TAP. This course helps services members navigate VA resources, including accessing benefits and services. In fiscal year 2024, benefit advisors assisted over 200,000 transition and service members. We understand that information provided can be extensive, so we offer additional guidance and clarification through one-on-one counseling sessions with benefit advisors, as well as those online and training that can be accessed anytime, before or after separation. We also welcome spouses into all TAP trainings as we recognize the key role they play in the transition process. As an example, our benefit advisors' commitment to transition and service members happened recently at Camp Foster, Okinawa, Japan. The benefit advisors assisted a service member who was overwhelmed with the transition process. Their one-on-one sessions with the advisor aided the soldier in understanding the benefits available, explained the timelines, and helped the documentation requirements for submission of the benefits delivery at discharge compensation claim. Upon exiting service, VA connects directly with each new veteran through the VA Solid Start program, providing one-on-one sessions tailored to address challenges that may face and link them to benefits and resources. For example, Jessica, who was on the verge of homelessness when Solid Start contacted her and had no idea she was eligible for health care and thought it was something only officers were available to officers. As the representative listened to Jessica, they decided to talk with her about health care, guide her through how to file a claim for compensation, and offered to connect her with a representative at the VA National Contact Center for those at risk of homelessness. By her last call with her Solid Start representative, Jessica was receiving compensation payments, had health care, and was living in an apartment. Since TAP inception in 1991, transition supports has significantly improved. VA offers several programs to support service members through transition and beyond, such as personalized career planning and veteran and spouse transition grant program. Ongoing assessment and modifications of TAP ensure VA meets the evolving needs of transitioning service members. In 2024, Veteran Service Organizations participation was added into the TAP course, serving as a direct connection between participants and service organization. The Benefits and Services course includes a practical exercise to reinforce critical information and highlight time-sensitive information benefits such as life insurance. Lastly, VA modernized the sign-up process for scheduling one-on-one assistance using quick response codes. VA is committed to maintaining a strong partnership with the Department of Defense, Department of Labor, and other interagency partners. We share Congress's goal to ensure transitioning service members, veterans, and their families are supported during and after their transition from military to civilian life and remain dedicated to strengthening our transition initiatives. Chairman Van Orden, Ranking Member Pappas, and members of the subcommittee, this concludes my statement. I'm happy to respond to any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Green. The written statement of Mr. Green will be entered into the record. Ms. Devlin, you are now recognized for 5 minutes to deliver your testimony.
Chairman Van Orden, Ranking Member Pappas, and distinguished members of the subcommittee, thank you for the opportunity to testify before you today on the current state of the Transition Assistance Program and everything we are doing to continue modernizing and refining the program. The Department of Labor Veterans Employment and Training Service, otherwise known as VETS, exists to support the employment and career goals of transitioning service members, veterans, military spouses, National Guardsmen, reservists as well. We have 3 core TAP workshops. Employment Fundamentals of Career Transition is the mandatory one-day course. We also provide 2 elective tracks. The employment workshop is, as it sounds, additional support for direct transition to civilian employment. The Career and Credential Exploration workshop provides support for navigating the labor market and non-college degree credentialing options such as apprenticeship, licensure, and certifications. Our satisfaction ratings for participants who take our courses are consistently high. For example, 96% indicate they would use what they learned in their own transition planning. 94% reported that the course enhanced their confidence in their transition planning. But classroom training is not enough, and transition is not a one-size-fits-all experience. I've been in this space for a long time, and whether it was during my tenure at VA or now at DOL, there's one consistent bit of feedback we get. Service members want personalized support beyond the classroom. VETS answered that call when we pilot tested and developed and implemented the Employment Navigator and Partnership Program, or EMPP as we call it. This program, which is currently available at 40 military installations, helps service members and their spouses navigate their post-military career journey. Navigators provide one-on-one career guidance and job-seeking skills support, as well as referrals to vetted partner organizations who provide additional services during and after separation from the military. Navigators also facilitate warm handovers to a designated point of contact at DOL-funded American Job Centers. And that is especially important if the service member does not meet career readiness standards. Data reflects that EMPP has been a great success. In fiscal year 2024, 99% of survey respondents reported positive feelings after meeting with their employment navigator and would recommend EMPP to a friend or a colleague. Also, 96% of respondents felt EMPP partners met or exceeded their employment-related expectations. And even more importantly, we now have outcome data. Our preliminary analysis shows, for example, that enlisted service members who worked with an employment navigator became employed approximately 2 months sooner and earned about 11% more than their counterparts who did not work with a navigator during their transition. This program is making an impact on service members' lives. The transition experiences of wounded warriors, caregivers, and military spouses are also unique. So we developed and implemented specialized courses like the Wounded Warrior and Caregiver Employment Workshop and the Transition Employment Assistance for Military Spouses Workshop to address their needs as well. We also know transition doesn't end with the issuing of the DD-214. Veterans may have several transitions throughout their careers, and we continue to provide support after separation with programs such as the Off-Base Transition Training Program. Facilitating successful military to civilian transitions requires coordination between federal and non-government partners. DOL appreciates the strong partnership with our interagency colleagues, including VA and DoD, plus veteran service organizations, state directors of Veterans Affairs, and many other non-government partners. Our long-term strategic goal for TAP is for the nation to recognize military service as a path to high-quality civilian careers. The future of the all-volunteer force depends on it. We look forward to our continued work with this committee, and we share in your commitment to ensuring service members and spouses have every opportunity for stable careers post-military. Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member, distinguished members of the subcommittee, thank you for this opportunity to testify before you today, and I welcome your questions.
Thank you, Ms. Devlin. The written statement of Ms. Devlin will be entered into the record. We're going to go to questioning. You guys know the deal. So do you. 5 minutes is it. You want to do a second round, 100%, or a third, or a fifth, or a 100th round? I don't care. We're going to get some answers this morning. So I now recognize Ranking Member Pappas for 5 minutes for questioning, sir.
Thank you very much to this panel and your discussion about such an important improvements over time. I want to turn to Mr. Baird first. In March 2024, GAO found that DoD is not reliably verifying whether warm handovers occur. GAO found that over a 2-year period, commanders or their designees verified that a warm handover was provided to nearly 78,000 transitioning service members who were not recorded as receiving one. GAO recommended that DoD develop additional guidance to commanders and their designees on verifying warm handovers and on recording the verifications in the TAP database. So I'm wondering what steps DoD has taken to address this recommendation.
Thank you for that question, Ranking Member. We've done a lot. And the GAO report really caught our attention, and we've made a lot of changes. Just yesterday, a new course stood up on the TAP site that is for military commanders, and it walks them through what their responsibility is in the TAP space, and it mentions the warm handover. We've also, probably the strongest arm we have is the service IG teams. And the Inspector Generals are now taking a look at the TAP process within the services to make sure that we're meeting all the requirements. It's an education process, and we will continue to educate them until they get it right.
Thanks for that, and we're interested in continuing to engage with you as that all rolls forward in making sure that those recommendations are continuing to be addressed. We've also heard concerns from VSOs that enrollment in SkillBridge is down. Our understanding is that the Navy and Marines have scaled back eligibility, and I'm wondering if you can explain why requirements might have changed.
The Navy and the Marine Corps took a hard look at who was going through SkillBridge, and what they found was, in a lot of cases, it was senior people. And so they've changed the rules, they've done policy. We see the same support for SkillBridge today that we saw before. The services are just getting better at determining who's the right person to go through SkillBridge.
Thanks for that, and I've seen the benefits of that program and heard about it directly from participating businesses as well as transitioning service members, and we want to continue to support a strong SkillBridge program. If I can turn to VA now, I'm wondering how VA is collaborating with DoD to ensure that individuals with mental health issues specifically are receiving the services that they need during that crucial first year after transition. You talked about Jessica, a veteran, and her experience with Solid Start. It was really important to hear about her example, but I'm wondering, specific to mental health issues, how we can continue to see the kind of collaboration that's going to help.
Thank you for that question. At VA, the way that we continue to collaborate with DoD in order for these transition service members are connected through mental health, we do connect them to VA in transition, and we also get an opportunity to follow them through our VA Solid Start program. So there are 3 particular areas that we actually connect with these transition and service members. 0 to 90 days, 91 to 180 days, and then 181 days to 365 days. We actually reach out to those particular veterans upwards of 7 times each one of those particular time periods. If one of those calls is answered, then we stop calling and we go to the next bucket of dates. So there's an opportunity for 21 calls to be made. Additionally, DoD provides a list to our VA Solid Start program. VA Solid Start prioritizes those programs and those particular veterans or service members to get an opportunity to outreach and make sure that there are no additional issues that may be there. And through in transition meeting monthly, they get an opportunity to see if there's any additional issues that may be there that they need to be addressed.
And just one more quickly, the most recent post-separation TAP assessment, I'm wondering if you can tell me what that indicates about veterans' satisfaction with TAP and whether the program effectively addresses the challenges that veterans are facing entering the civilian workforce.
Thank you, sir, for that question. Yes, the most recent, what we call post-separation transition assessment program gives a satisfaction score of 96.3%. So it is highly touted, and during that particular study, we did have a great satisfaction rate that we were meeting exactly what transition and service members.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I yield back.
Thank you, sir. The gentleman yields back, and I recognize Representative Hamadeh from the great state of Arizona.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Arizona's awesome.
It's much better weather right now. And thank you to our witnesses for being here today. As both a veteran and a member of this committee, I find it troubling that only 52% of our transitioning service members are receiving timely access to the Transition Assistance Program, TAP. This is unacceptable. Now, when I served as an Army Reserve intelligence officer, I witnessed firsthand how critical proper transition support is for our warfighters, and we expect excellence and accountability from our service members while they're in uniform, and we should demand nothing less when they're preparing them for civilian life. Now, my first question is for Ms. Devlin. I was struck by something you said during our pre-hearing call yesterday. You mentioned that when service members don't complete all parts of TAP, you consider it simply in the law and DoD's responsibility, not yours. Yet your department's own data shows that service members who receive proper transition assistance through your Employment Navigator program find jobs 63 days faster and earn 11% higher wages. Now, how can the Department of Labor claim to prioritize veteran employment outcomes while washing your hands of responsibility for ensuring service members actually receive the training?
Thank you for asking that question. And just to be clear, we are involved in working with DoD on the accountability that's required to make sure that service members do participate in TAP and have access to it. Forgive me if my answer to that original question wasn't clear in our meeting. We do take great pride in being a strong partner to DoD, and we have a very active engagement in our interagency council. And we do look at the data. We brainstorm together solutions to improve participation rate, how to help military leaders understand the importance of TAP. We contribute to how that training should look, if there's training that's required. We definitely are very involved, and we recognize the importance of early intervention in participation in TAP, and absolutely, the Navigator program, which is at 40 installations, has proven to be incredibly life-changing for these service members who have access to it.
But Section 1144 of Title 10 specifically tasks the Secretary of Labor with, quote, furnishing information on employment and training assistance. But that isn't optional. And now the law doesn't say when DoD decides to let you. The law makes clear that the Department of Labor is a key partner in this process with responsibility for coordinating the employment components. Let me ask you about accountability. At Fort Cavazos in Texas, service members who attended TAP on time re-enlist at a rate of 60% compared to just 30% for those who don't. Now that suggests that TAP actually helps retention, which should motivate commanders. Now, Ms. Devlin, given that your department shows military members who use the Employment Navigator program find jobs 2 months faster and earn higher wages, what specific recommendations has the Department of Labor made to improve unit commander accountability for TAP attendance?
Thank you for that question as well. And I agree, in many cases, participation in TAP early enough helps the service member really see their options clearly in terms of remaining in the military for additional time versus transitioning out at that point in their life. In many cases, it helps them to realize they might need more time to fully prepare for a civilian transition. With respect to helping the service member transition and any recommendations that we have for accountability, One of the things we talked about in the committee, for example, in the interagency committee, is training for commanders to help them understand the value of sending their troops to TAP. Value in terms of retention, but also in terms of recruitment. Every veteran that becomes a veteran, leaves the military, is a walking billboard for either military service or not, based on the experience that they had in the transition. So we have conversations around those kinds of things that are maybe different approaches to tackling the problem. And as we sit through these committee meetings, we are all very engaged in the process. My colleagues at VA and DoD are very engaged in making sure, because we all believe it's important that service members have access to TAP early enough in the process.
Sure, but I keep hearing that there's conversations, but what about accountability?
I'll defer to my DoD colleague, if it's okay with you, Mr. Baird, because I know that he has been working on, with the military services, on accountability that we've talked about in our committee meetings.
One of the things we ask in their questionnaire after they've finished with TAP is, was there any barrier to you getting to TAP? And that number has remained at about 1%.
Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Thank you. And Mr. Amade, if you want a second round of questioning, we're here. This is what we're doing today. So I appreciate that tremendously. The gentleman yields back. I now recognize Mr. McGarvey, my very dear friend from the great state of Kentucky, for 5 minutes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you all for being here today. We're talking about a really important thing, which is how we transition active duty soldiers into civilian life, what our veterans do after that initial call to military service. And the Transition Assistance Program, TAP, what we're talking about today, really helps that transition go smoothly. And it provides the resources, the training, the support that our veterans need, whether they're going back to school, whether they're starting a business, whether they're just preparing for life, finding a job outside of the military. It's like a guide. It helps service members navigate what they're going to encounter and to do it confidently. Just looking at this panel, we can see how many different agencies are involved in this, but with TAP shared between you guys, collective responsibility also means shared accountability. And as part of that accountability is ensuring that we have common, high-quality standards across the board so that no matter where you go do your TAP, you have a quality experience that prepares you for life after the military. In Kentucky, we've got KFC, and this may seem like a trivial example, but one of the things you do when you are training employees to work at a KFC is you have to have training for every employee that ensures you have that same quality no matter what restaurant you go to anywhere in the world, right? We want to make sure that no matter where you go in the military for your transition assistance program, you get that same quality. And right now, we are hearing from veterans that that's not the case. Even the different branches of the service have different transition assistance programs. They're frustrated. Veterans are frustrated. They're not getting the level of support that they feel they need, and sometimes it's available. But when it's not available to them because of what city they're in or where they're stationed, that's frustrating. So, Mr. Baird, how are the DoD and the military branches making sure that local leaders and unit commanders stick to the rules, ensure service members attend TAP on time?
Thank you for that question. That's the very reason we made it a service IG spotlight item, so that they would take a look at it. Commanders do what the IG looks at. And so we're hoping that prior to 2022, the services did not have corrective action plans for how they were going to get. Those plans went to GAO, all those plans were accepted, and now they're executing those plans to reach their, higher numbers.
I appreciate that, because not only do we need the quality, we are hearing from veterans that there's a disregard for the program at DoD. So we want to make sure that people are going. What changes are being made to shift the culture to prioritize a quality TAP program and that people go?
I think the emphasis is, one, coming through the IG, and two, coming through the increased training we're going to do for commanders. For the first time, we now have a guide that they can download, and we also have an online class they can take to help them understand. I think when TAP first came out, they saw it as just another program that they had to do. Now they're starting to see the benefit of it. we need to get, really, quite frankly, we need to get to the new commanders and make sure we do training with the new commanders right off.
I appreciate that. And Ms. Devlin, I want to switch to you for the last time we've got remaining. You have talked about, especially in your written testimony, the importance of tailoring the TAP program to actually meet the demands of private industry and what employers are looking for. How can the TAP program better involve employers to meet the level of involvement that you would like to see, to get the needs of private industries and adapt to current job market trends?
Some of the things that we do at the Department of Labor Vets is we engage with specific industries where there's a high demand for employment and where they're really looking to hire transitioning service members and veterans. Defense industrial base, for example, is an area that's in high demand and important to national security. So we engage with employers through our employer outreach program, and we bring that feedback from those employers back into the department, and we infuse it throughout our program. We also take feedback from service members about what they're hearing, and even after they leave the military, and what their experiences were like.
Thank you very much. And like I said, we want to make sure this is actually a program that works for our veterans. It's so important. To transition from military life to civilian life is not always easy.
Right.
And we got to do everything we can to help them out. Thank you guys so much. I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Gentleman yields. The chair now recognizes Representative King Hines from the Northern Mariana Islands. Ma'am?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It only took me 2 days to get here this time, but I'm here.
I don't know how you do it, but God bless you for being here. We appreciate it.
Thank you to all the witnesses for joining us this morning. So I find it very disconcerting that only 52% of service members attended TAP on time, right? And so how do we improve this? Should this be a mandatory program, or where that it's compulsory for every service member? Is that the case now, or is that not the case? It's an open-ended question to whoever wants to answer.
Thank you for that question. Yes, TAP is mandatory.
And so why are the statistics the way they are?
Quite honestly, I believe because we weren't keeping an eye on them close enough, but we are now. We look at them at our level with the Transition Executive Committee, but also, too, the department IG teams are looking at the numbers to make sure that they're staying on track.
Okay. I see that there are different agencies here who collaborate, right? Are there gaps or legislative fixes that Congress can help with to ensure that Department of Labor, Veterans Affairs, and whichever other agency works together to be able to streamline the process of helping the veterans and ensuring that they're getting the assistance that they need?
I can jump in and just say that from the Department of Labor standpoint, we believe we've got what we need with the committee that we have in place. So for example, when we pilot tested the Employment Navigator program and were able to demonstrate the success, we went to the committee and said, listen, we think we should expand this and have more service members have access to it. DoD and the military services were at the table. They were eager to help. We brainstormed a solution, we developed a strategy, and we're going forward with implementation of the expansion, subject to funding, of course. So those partnerships are really strong that we have. When it comes to the data on participation rates, we look at that data on a quarterly basis and sometimes more regularly in between those quarterly meetings, and we ask questions. Why is this one, a little bit less here? What's happening here? And the military services are there, and they help us either answer the question on the spot or they go research it and come back to us. So we have a system that enables accountability between our agencies.
All right. So I come from a rural community. I come from the Northern Mariana Islands, where access to care and services is very limited anyway for our veterans. How are we ensuring that the folks who are coming out of the service are getting the assistance that they need so that they are able to go right into the workforce, that they are ready to go into the workforce?
So part of getting ready to go into the workforce is to understand what the individual's interests, aptitudes, and abilities are. And where we have the Employment Navigator, they help them navigate all of that. Where we don't have it, there's still the course, right? So if they do the one-day course, it's a lot, and sometimes we hear it's like drinking from a fire hose, which is why we offer the 2 elective courses. And taking the first course at TAP helps the service member understand what they might want to do in their elective courses, right? So if they really know that they just want to get into a job, they feel like they have the skills already, Maybe they completed some college while in the military. They might go to the employment workshop to learn more about how to do the resume, interviewing skills, networking, all those kinds of things. But if they don't have the training, maybe they want to learn more hands-on, maybe they want to do an apprenticeship, they can do the career credentialing workshop. After that, the connection to our partners, I think, is critical, because once they get into that community, they can still keep that connection to our partners. For example, the American workforce system, being able to connect with the Disabled Veteran Outreach Program coordinators, local veteran employment representatives. That gives them the continued support that they need after they get into their community, so that they can continue to keep working on getting that stable job.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I give back my time.
The gentlelady yields back. The chair now recognizes myself for 5 minutes in the third person, which is never just going to not be weird. Hey, I'm going to take a point of personal privilege before we start that clock. I just want to cover something that Mr. Pappas referenced in his opening statements. So currently the DoD is deployed to about 60 countries at any given time, and that's not going to change. And when someone joins the military and they decide to transition from one gender to another, that's a 2 to 3 to 4 year process where people are taking hormones and then having some very, very absolutely brutal, barbaric surgeries, and they're non-deployable at that point. And so if someone decides to do this, and that's up to them. Chris Beck is the first openly transgender Navy SEAL, and he's a really good friend of mine, and he's a guy now again. You know, he went back and forth, but he's a really good friend of mine, and I've known him for 30 years. And he's a good man, and he's a solid operator. He's a frogman, and we didn't care what was going on. But he got out of the military and then decided to do this. And here's why that's so important. When we say that people are overseas in 60 countries, I have to leave my wife and children, or a wife has to leave her husband or her wife. We don't care what you're doing in your personal time, but we got to leave our kids and potentially get killed because someone is doing this. And that's, Mr. Pappas, the reason that I agree with the current policy, and I understand and I respect you tremendously. I just want to make that very clear. Someone is going to leave their family to forward deploy at all times, and that's all I have to say about that. Ma'am, Ms. Devlin, I can't tell you how excited I am that Lori Chavez Reimers, the new secretary, oh my gosh. So did you ever see the movie The Other Guys? Watch it. Marky Mark, Will Ferrell, it's great. They did Fresh Start. So we're doing a fresh start. Now, I saw you sneak in there, Rodriguez. Stand up, sir. Yeah, oh yeah, you tried to, yeah, uh-huh. Nice to see you. Oh yeah, yeah, try to sneak in. Didn't work. Fresh start, ma'am, with you guys, and I expect a lot out of you. I expect a lot out of Lori, and I know she can perform. President Trump expects a lot out of you and a lot out of Lori, and so does the entire country, not just our veterans community. So you guys are in good hands, and I expect the best out of you. Okay, that's enough of that. Okay, Mr. Baird, do you consider TAP a retention tool?
Yes, sir, I do.
Why?
Because those folks who go out into the field and do TAP, and if they do it right, then I see the benefits of being in the military.
Yep.
So I think it's a great retention tool.
Okay, you're correct, sir, and they talk to each other. Our vets talk to each other.
Yes, sir.
You know what I mean? And it gets around if it's terrible. And so it is a retention tool. And as Mr. Pappas said, it's a national security issue. Mr. Green, you gave an anecdote about Jessica and one other person, right? But 52% of folks go to this program. That means 48% don't. 200,000 enlisted math. It's about 96,000 people you can't give me an anecdote for a year. So although I appreciate Jessica and her job, there's 96,000 other people you can't give me an anecdote for because they didn't go to TAP, and that, sir, is unacceptable. We talked in private, Ms. Yount. I asked you a couple questions yesterday, and there's a Solid Start program. You're doing it. Here's the legislation. We pulled it up, and this is highlighted. So it says VA employees must call veterans for outreach purposes, right?
Correct.
And survey indicates veterans prefer communication methods other than a phone call. They like texting and chatting and whatnot. Okay, so the OGC interpreted this to be a voice phone call when it says calling each veteran. So who is the OGC that made this decision?
That's VA's Office of General Counsel.
Who is the person? I asked you specifically yesterday.
Unfortunately, we were unable to get
You're
the
excused.
individual's name.
You are excused. Now, you will respect this committee, ma'am. Mr. Green, there have been cuts by DOJ, and I'll be very frank with you. The messaging and how these guys are getting the word out is not okay. They're just not doing a good job of it, Mr. Pappas. They aren't. And we are not beholden to any administration. We're not. We're beholden to our constituents and our veterans. So I'm just going to say it out loud. What they're trying to do is good and righteous at DOJ. How they're getting the message across is confusing, and it's terrifying our veterans, right? I mean, he's getting calls, I'm getting calls, Morgan, you get calls, you guys get calls? But I want to ask you this question. Is there a measurable, appreciative degradation of your ability from the Department of Veterans Affairs or the Department of Labor, ma'am, to deliver services to our veterans due to this DOJ stuff?
No, sir.
Okay. So, ma'am?
No, sir.
Okay, so here's what we got to do. We got to quit fear-mongering with veterans and our seniors and hungry kids. I was raised on welfare. I went to bed hungry. I don't like that. We're not cutting SNAP benefits. We're not cutting WIC. As a matter of fact, we increased it by $500 million. We're not cutting veterans benefits. And there's 8 folks that were released from the Toma VA Healthcare Center where I get my care, and I love them. And I just called Karen. She runs the place. And I said, Karen, has there been any degradation of your ability to provide medical care to our veterans? And she said no. So I'm just going to ask everybody on both sides of the aisle and external folks to quit fear-mongering. Because when I ask you, Mr. Green, you're a subject matter expert. Ms. Devlin, subject matter expert. You know what you're talking about, right? So when you say there's no degradation of your ability to provide services to our veterans, I take you at your word. And so let's just stop doing that. That's all I'm going to ask. So, Mr. Pappas, do you have anything you want to wrap up with, sir, before we go to the second panel?
I have no further questions. Interested in engaging our second panel.
Okay, excellent. You guys are excused, and I hope you stick around for the next panel. And we'll take you, you know, everyone says 5 minutes, it always 10, so let's just say 10 minutes. We'll take a 10-minute recess. Thank you very much. Committee will come to order. Sorry, not bad. I am now in the proper uniform of the day. Our second panel, we're going to be hearing from our witnesses, Ms. Joy Craig, Associate Director of Services, Members Affairs, VFW. Next witness is Ms. Elizabeth O'Brien, Senior Vice President of Hiring, our heroes, U.S. Chamber of Commerce. Nice to see you. Third witness, Ms. Barbara Carson, Managing Director of Program Services for the D'Angelo Institute of Veterans and Military Families, Syracuse University. It's a very big title. Our fourth witness is Mr. Brian Lewis, Executive Director of Customer Operations at Consumers Energy. And our final witness to this panel is Ms. Candy Tillman, the Managing Co-Founder at 50 Strong. So I'd like to welcome you and ask you to stand, please, and raise your right hands. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to provide is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Okay, please be seated. Let the record reflect that all witnesses have answered in the affirmative. Ms. Craig, you're now recognized for 5 minutes to deliver your testimony on behalf of the VFW.
Thank you, Chairman. Chairman Van Orden, Ranking Member Pappas, and members of the subcommittee. On behalf of the men and women of the Veterans of Foreign Wars of the United States and its auxiliary, thank you for the opportunity to provide our remarks on the Transition Assistance Program, or TAP. Nearly 200,000 service members leave the military each year, with 80% separating before retirement. Military force management depends on a steady pipeline of new recruits to sustain operational readiness. This ongoing cycle underscores the importance of ensuring the Department of Defense delivers effective military-to-civilian transition programs. For many service members, joining the military is a means of securing stable employment or a path to upward mobility. It is a major life event and conversely, so is transition. Despite spending up to 6 months training new recruits, DoD provides only 5 days of preparation for their return to civilian life. Veterans who are not fully prepared face increased risks of underemployment, financial hardship, and suicide, especially within the first year after separation. While DoD's primary mission is national security, it has legal obligations to provide transition services. Federal law mandates that all eligible service members begin transition support no later than 1 year before separation. DoD must ensure timely TAP attendance and provide a warm handoff to community resources. In October 2023, DoD testified before Congress that commanding officers frequently waive TAP attendance due to mission requirements, involuntary separations, or personal choice. At the same hearing, the Government Accountability Office reported that 53% of all TAP waivers were approved, with 22% of at-risk service members skipping the mandatory 2-day track entirely. DoD must allow more time for TAP participation, ensure command support for transition, tailor courses to different separation types, expand access for Guard and Reserve members, and better integrate spouses into the process. VFW's transition survey shows that future veterans' primary concerns after separation include finding employment, navigating service-connected disabilities, maintaining financial stability, and losing their sense of purpose and camaraderie. It is unrealistic to assume that every service member has a job waiting or a safety net to catch them on the outside. The VFW recommends integrating transition support early and at multiple points throughout a service member's career rather than relying solely on the Transition Assistance Program. Poor enforcement of TAP attendance disproportionately affects junior enlisted service members who are the most vulnerable post-discharge. The VFW's transition survey highlights other issues with TAP. An Army E6 from Fort Riley reported their unit did not provide adequate time for a smooth transition and described TAP as an overwhelming fire hose of information with no time to act on what was taught. One sailor from Quantico was repeatedly pulled from TAP classes for operational duties, while another missed crucial instruction because they were not released from deployment in time. These reports reveal a culture of prioritizing operational needs over transition. One area showing improvement is VA's TAP 6.0 program, which has increased access to benefits counseling, allowing in-person accredited representatives to help service members navigate VA claims. Since its launch in January 2024, VFW has reached 13,000 more members than the year prior, a 54% increase in engagement, which is why we urge Congress to pass the TAP Promotion Act to ensure all future veterans receive this essential assistance to claim their earned benefits as early as possible. The transition experience can also have lasting effects on military recruitment. Poor transition can impact how veterans speak to their children and communities about the value of military service and could cause young people to be hesitant to join, fearing their own post-discharge challenges. To address these and other ongoing issues, which I've detailed in my written testimony, the VFW urges Congress to establish a key position within DoD to oversee transition. We recommend an Undersecretary of Defense for Transition to oversee, coordinate, and modernize all transition programs. As it stands, transition services are fragmented and inconsistently enforced at the unit level where operational priorities often take precedence. An undersecretary would provide Congress a single point of accountability and drive the necessary culture change within DoD. Chairman Van Orden, Ranking Member Pappas, this concludes my remarks. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Ms. Craig. The written statement of Ms. Craig will be entered into the record. Ms. O'Brien, you are now recognized for 5 minutes to deliver your testimony.
Good morning, Chairman Van Orden, Ranking Member Pappas, and distinguished members of the subcommittee. I am Elizabeth O'Brien. I am the Senior Vice President of Hiring Our Heroes, an initiative of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation. I have also been, for the last 2 decades, an active duty military spouse and proud mother of 3 Army brats during our nation's longest conflicts. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak on the need to update and modernize transition assistance programs for service members transitioning from active duty to the civilian workforce. Since our inception at Hiring Our Heroes, we have served over 1 million members and currently support 80,000 military-connected individuals each year. Economic opportunity sustains the all-volunteer force, but success depends on effective, career navigation. Programs like SkillBridge and employment-related pathways are vital, ensuring today's warriors become tomorrow's best recruiters. As we all know, in 2011, the United States faced a crisis in veteran unemployment as young veterans struggled with rates soaring up to 30%. The U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation launched Hiring Our Heroes, and we united forces with state and local chambers, businesses, Department of Defense, and Department of Labor and the VA. The public-private effort helped cut post-9/11 unemployment from 12.1% to 5.8% by 2015. However, today, veteran unemployment remains below non-veterans at 4%. However, the unemployment data reveals little about the true employment journey of transitioning service members. Research shows from McKinsey & Company that while veterans generally out-earn civilians, 60% of transitioning service members earn less in their first civilian job than in the military. Penn State University reported that 61% of veterans feel unemployed, citing a mismatch between their skills and the civilian job opportunities. Edelman found that 62% of transitioning service members couldn't secure a job at their desired level, and the LinkedIn Veteran Opportunity Report revealed that veterans are half as likely as civilians to reach leadership roles, again pointing to a disconnect between military experience and employer recognition. The U.S. still falls short in post-military career support. The RAND study confirmed GAO's 2020 findings that 45 overlapping programs across 11 agencies with less than 5% of funding for job placement or skills translation. Most transitioning service members need employment support, yet TAP isn't solely designated for that. RAND's 2024 report urged greater investment in employment programs and stronger federal and nonprofit collaboration. SkillBridge, a DoD initiative, is the sole federal transition program that turns conventional transition outcomes on its head. For over a decade at Hiring Our Heroes, we have facilitated and worked as one of the largest intermediaries in support of SkillBridge. In the past 5 years, we have connected 10,600 fellows with 2,500 employers nationwide, inclusive of all ranks. 89% job offer rate within 3 months, $107,000 average starting salary, which is double the pay of an E6 with 8 years of service, and 20% higher than an O3. What we know is that experiential bridge programs close the gap around poor transition. Our Strategic Insight report surveyed 1,900 SkillBridge participants and 381 non-participants. Time to employment was much faster for fellows, with 63% being employed within 1 month of transition versus 38% of non-participants. Fellows were far more likely to take a job for positive reasons. Fellows were more likely to recommend service to future generations, with 61% saying they would recommend service versus 54%. Also, military spouse employment is key to veteran transition success, providing financial stability and allowing the veteran to find the right fit job or upskilling opportunity. Currently, Hiring Our Heroes facilitates the Department of Defense's Military Spouse Career Accelerator pilot. Since 2022 of December, we have placed over 1,000 spouses with an offer rate of 85% and 60% remote placement. As we look forward to the future, HOH recommends the following areas of focus. Focus on more employment-related services as part of transition. They should be prioritized while reducing or eliminating duplicative programs. Expand opportunities for SkillBridge and apprenticeships. The programs help service members showcase their skills, create informed career decisions, playing a crucial role in successful transition. The military to civilian transition is not a one-time
Gentlelady's time
event.
has expired.
Thank you. I look forward to your
You're sure
questions.
welcome, and thanks for that. And your written testimony will be entered in the record, which I actually read. I did. So, and Ms. Carson, you're now recognized for 5 minutes.
Chairman Van Orden, Ranking Member Pappas, and distinguished members of the subcommittee, thank you for the opportunity to provide testimony today on behalf of the Daniello Institute for Veterans and Military Families at Syracuse University. Even in the best of circumstances, we know that military to civilian transition can present significant challenges. Yet the bar for a successful transition is often quite low, focusing on unemployment, despite data showing 62% of veterans are underemployed after 6.5 years. When exiting service, veterans are qualified to get jobs that reflect and respect their service and training. We should not assume that those jobs are the same ones they did in the military. Securing meaningful employment can help avoid enormous financial, social, and personal costs. These costs also have implications for our all-volunteer force, and in turn, our national security. Data from the Military Family Lifestyle Survey, our collaboration with Blue Star Families, as well as recent data that was recently published by Ipsos with Call of Duty Endowment, as well as Mission Roll Call, both point to the hesitancy to recommend or pursue military service for the younger generation, despite the positive perception of veterans. The available evidence is a fundamental starting point for how we might improve TAP and the transition process, and where TAP alone is not sufficient. First, as a mandatory program, TAP must continuously be assessed to ensure it's accessible and meets the evolving needs of transitioning service members. Despite recent progress, many still fail to begin TAP as early as required by law, and some fail to attend the required portion at all. At the same time, we recognize the inherent tension DoD faces between prioritizing mission readiness and focusing on preparation for post-service life. We must explore options that preserve flexibility for commanders to meet their compliance goals, but also include consequences for non-compliance, such as integrating TAP participation into those performance evaluations. Beyond TAP, our system of supports is complex and not always aligned with what people need or what works best. There are currently 46 programs across 11 agencies, which RAND estimates represent $13 billion of expenditures every year. This investment skews heavily towards education services, despite evidence that employment is the key component of most veterans' plans after service. Budget and performance data for these programs is hard to come by, making it difficult to address overlaps and gaps with existing programs. TAP is one of the few federal programs that has been evaluated, and while it shows long-term employment benefits, effects on wages have been mixed. Notably, wages were better when TAP was completed earlier and combined with access to other resources. The Veteran Metrics Initiative, or TVMI, a longitudinal study of post-9/11 veterans managed by Penn State University, found that in the months following separation, 2/3 of veterans used at least one program aside from TAP. A third used even more, and veterans who used more programs experienced better outcomes. Nonprofit initiatives like our Onward to Opportunity program contribute to these outcomes. O2O provides skilled training and credentialing to over 10,000 transitioning service members, veterans of every era, and spouses each year. As the only program that's been rigorously evaluated by a third party, O2O provides non-government efforts. Many often operate more efficiently. It shows that non-government programs operate more efficiently and effectively than some of the government counterparts. In addition to data that's demonstrating the value of multiple programs aside from TAP, we know that transition is more than one moment in time. Given this evidence, warm handovers must be easier between DoD, VA, and labor, as well as to states and communities. We encourage appropriate data sharing with safety and other reduced barriers to enrollment in benefits and services at the federal, state, and local level. Further, though TAP can be a valuable resource, data suggests that only about half of military spouses engage with it. We encourage increasing their access and/or offering programs that are more tailored for them. Transition impacts the entire family unit, and everyone benefits when spouses are prepared. In sum, the evidence demands an accountable system of supports beyond TAP and government alone, empowering investment of scarce resources into programs that work best for veterans and their families during this critical time. Doing so not only impacts their well-being, successful transition benefits our communities, preserves the all-volunteer force, and ultimately strengthens our national security. Thank you, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Ms. Carson. Your testimony will be, your written statement will be entered into the hearing record. Mr. Lewis, you're now recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman Van Orden, Ranking Member Pappas, and members of the subcommittee for the opportunity to discuss critical programs that support our nation's veterans. My name is Brian Lewis, and I'm the Executive Director of Customer Operations at Consumers Energy, where I've worked for 12 years, serving in a variety of customer-centric roles. Consumers Energy provides natural gas and electric service to nearly 7 million Michigan residents. Prior to my civilian career, I was a combat medic and a lab tech in the U.S. Army, where I was entrusted with the lives of my fellow soldiers. When I transitioned to civilian life, however, I had to abandon medical aspirations as I found my Army training at that time had limited transferability, limiting my job prospects. The challenges veterans face finding transferable and meaningful civilian careers after service to our country are real and compelled me to seek out ways to advocate on their behalf, which I now support at Consumers Energy when veterans join the company. At Consumers Energy, we have more than 800 military veterans who take our pride of service beyond self, a passion we learned in the military, and apply it to a new mission, applying essential heat and light to our fellow Michiganders. Our company's efforts to support veterans is about our earnest desire to ease the often difficult transition out of the military by providing a welcoming environment for colleagues with different backgrounds and experiences. Our veterans-based resource group, the Veterans Advisory Panel, provides space for employees to help drive policy change both within our organization and with external partners to better recruit, retain, and support veterans. Today, the Veterans Advisory Panel is one of the company's largest resource groups with over 500 members. Their feedback ushered in a partnership with the U.S. Department of Labor and led to the registration of 7 different job roles as approved apprenticeship programs. Now, our veterans can use their GI Bill benefits while in apprenticeships that prepare them for rewarding lifelong careers. We've also recruited veterans for pre-apprenticeship programs referred to as energy-style boot camps, hosted at a training center located in Congressman Barrett's district. In partnership with the Utility Workers Union of America and Power for America, these gas and electric boot camps have prepared over 300 veterans for energy careers by providing a pathway to apprenticeships that lead to high-paying, in-demand electric and natural gas careers. As you can imagine, though, demand for these programs outpaces availability, and each time a new boot camp opens, we receive more applicants than we have spaces to fill. While programs like these are meaningful, there's still work to be done. We encourage Congress to strengthen the connection between the Transition Assistance Program offices and companies in states that aren't close to active duty military installations. We also see great potential in the Department of Defense's Skill Bridge program, but believe further coordination with the Transition Assistance Program will improve connections between veterans and prospective employers. If you're an active duty service member of the military or a military veteran listening today, my message is simple. Consumers Energy is the ideal career destination for you. We value your heart of service and the unique skills you bring to the energy industry. We will do everything we can to provide opportunities in the field, at a plant, or in an office. We'll invest in your development and give you the opportunity to thrive in a team that's essential to providing energy to Michigan. Thank you again for the opportunity to participate in this discussion. Consumers Energy stands ready, willing, and able to support policymakers in improving economic opportunity for our nation's veterans. And with that, I look forward to your questions. Thank you.
Mr. Lewis, I want to thank you for your incredibly shameless pitch for your company. That was just so in your face. Let's just acknowledge it. And hey, thank you, sir. Did you go to Fort Sam?
I spent a year at Fort Sam with a bunch of sailors.
That's right. Best year of your life, pal. Admit
Best
it.
year.
Okay. Your written testimony will be entered into the record. And Ms. Tillman, you're now recognized for 5 minutes.
Chairman Van Orden, Ranking Member Pappas, members of the subcommittee, thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to speak to you today. I'm here on behalf of 50 Strong, an impact-first small business that my husband and I co-founded in 2020. He was a former junior enlisted service member that served 2 tours with the Army Rangers. Our mission is simple: to help strong employers build strong pathways for military talent and to provide easy virtual connections for those in transition. Just last Thursday, hundreds of military-affiliated job seekers registered for one 50 Strong event that featured 20 employers. Of those that registered, 25% identified as E1 through E4 ranks, 54% were military-affiliated students, and many were transitioning military, opting in on their own. After this one short virtual event, 90% of those that attended say they discovered new civilian employment pathways, and 98% said they would recommend it to others. We do this almost every week. In 2024, we supported approximately 200 employers, 100 education institutions, and nearly 13,000 military-affiliated job seekers. This was all done at no cost to those job seekers and at no cost to taxpayers. It is thanks to the support of 13 corporate partners. Several years ago, a veteran at a Fortune 500 company said to me, "We want to hire more transitioning military. We don't know how to reach them efficiently." I still hear this every day from employers. As a civilian with 20 years of experience in Fortune 500, this tells me that we need industry-enabled, modern, and accessible solutions that complement the critical role that government and nonprofit organizations play. I'll offer 4 areas today for us to consider together. First, we must recognize that employment is critical to military transition, and therefore, employers are a critical stakeholder for any related policy. According to Military OneSource, nearly 3/4 of all those leaving active duty separate versus retire. As a reminder to us all, the vast majority of transitioning military will need civilian employment, and it is employers that offer employment. Secondly, let's recognize that SkillBridge has revolutionized employer participation in military transition in the last 6 years. As one strong example, Lowe's has established a SkillBridge program that enables opportunities at any of their locations across the country. Last year, 95% of their SkillBridge participants received a full-time job offer at the end of their fellowship. This means that a service member returning home to Oshkosh, Wisconsin, or Bedford, New Hampshire, or Buckeye, Arizona, where I live, has a pathway to a strong future in their home community on day 1 of post-active duty. I'll also highlight Cushman & Wakefield, a global real estate services firm. They've taken on over 100 SkillBridge interns to more than 30 different types of roles with a 90% full-time offer rate. My thanks to the bipartisan leadership of the past 3 administrations toward this phenomenal growth. Third, we must find solutions that work for employers of all shapes and sizes, including small businesses that employ 47% of private sector workers in the U.S. Importantly, state and local chambers of commerce and industry-driven business associations and business vertical supported groups are often key drivers of small business enablement. Finally, we must recognize that military transition includes the very large number of those that enroll in school in what I'll refer to as extended military transition. Yet there is no at-scale support to help them translate their skills from the military, and there's little tracking of employment outcomes once they complete their education. Yes, we must protect this investment. And also, we must recognize that any education, training, or certification program should honor our promise to those who have served by leading to meaningful employment, not dead-end pathways that exhaust their hard-earned education benefits. We must also ensure that VA funding is used as intended to intentionally support military-affiliated students. Based on this, I have a few recommendations. First, include diverse employer voices in all congressional hearings and roundtables. Enhance TAP curriculum with industry-driven virtual career preparation. Continue to support DoD's efforts towards strong employment outcomes. Modify SkillBridge MOU requirements to maintain flexible internship models. Champion local collaboration in your communities. Develop a tracking mechanism for employment outcomes for all transition programs, and encourage all schools receiving post-9/11.
Gentlelady's time has expired, and ma'am, your written testimony will be entered into the record, and I read it too, and you have some fantastic recommendations. You certainly do. I now recognize the ranking member, Mr. Pappas, for 5 minutes to question the witnesses at his leisure.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Tillman, I don't know if you wanted to complete the thought. It appeared you were close to the end, but I think your recommendations are really important for the subcommittee.
My last recommendation, thank you so much, sir. My last recommendation, encourage all schools receiving post-9/11 GI Bill funds to allocate resources specifically for student veteran support services.
Well, thank you for that. And maybe I could just turn to you for a question. You highlighted SkillBridge as a really important development, something that has been really working. Can you help us understand what the barriers are for more businesses to participate in SkillBridge and what we should be doing to ensure that that connection is made? Because every time I'm out in my district, I meet employers that have veteran employees, are incredibly eager to continue to find more. This is a time where most industries are continuing to hire. So talk about the need to make sure SkillBridge reaches more employers.
Thank you so much for the question. SkillBridge is often an entry point for new employers that are trying to figure out how to engage with military talent. There's an important component of SkillBridge that has enabled so much growth and so much momentum in industry, and that is the ability for employers to open internships through what we'll refer to as third-party intermediary facilitators. One recommendation I'd like to make, I will point out, thanks to the DoD, the Military to Civilian Transition Office, tremendous efforts have been made to ensure strong outcomes in the recent last year's MOU updates. There is one modification I'd like to offer to ensure that new employers, particularly small businesses, can most flexibly engage in the program, and that is to delay Section 4.3.4 of the current MOU that requires individual MOUs for all host employers until a future date, but mandate employment outcomes reporting immediately as outlined in Section 4.3.3 for the third-party facilitators that are making their participation possible.
Thanks for that recommendation. I appreciate your focus on the small business community too, which I know is valuable to all of our districts here. Ms. Carson, if I can turn to you for a question. You highlighted your Onward to Opportunity program. And can you tell us a little bit more about how that got started, what makes it unique, and if there are lessons that can be translated from the success of that program to other initiatives that provide transition assistance?
Thank you for the question. The Onward to Opportunity program began with a philanthropic effort by the Schultz Family Foundation and continues to this day with both corporate and philanthropic support. It is credentialing, not made-up ones that we say that you have a badge from Syracuse University, but industry-recognized credentials in cyber, IT, HR, and the PMP, for example. We make that available at no cost thanks to those funders that I just mentioned. And when combined with a connection to employers, it's a very successful intervention that, as I shared in my testimony, written and verbal, has been evaluated by third parties. And that's exactly what we'd like to see with other interventions. What are the outcomes you intend, and are you achieving them?
Thank you very much for that. Ms. Craig, if I can turn to you, I appreciate your testimony here today, and I think you identified that push and pull relationship that exists between those who are actively serving and their command when it comes to setting aside time to prepare for transition. Right now, there's only a small amount of time for TAP, and some describe it as an experience like drinking from a fire hose. We hear that term all the time. So what suggestions do you want to highlight to ensure that folks can manage the flow of that water and that every service member is given adequate time to be able to prepare?
Thank you for that question, Ranking Member Pappas. As I mentioned earlier, DoD does spend anywhere between 6 weeks and 6 months training, onboarding service members to become war fighters, but they're lucky if they get 5 days when they prepare to leave the military. And the real question is, why only 5? Why can't TAP be longer or segmented in a way that members touch base with the program multiple times throughout their service? We do believe that that would be a great question for an Undersecretary of Defense to investigate further. But the fire hose of information that they receive during those TAP classes, they're given very little time to actually act on all the long to-do list that they create for themselves. So we believe that TAP should be either extended in time, or that commanders could be a little bit more gracious in giving service members time on the clock to prepare for transition.
Thanks very much. I yield back.
The gentleman yields back. The chair now recognizes Mr. Amade from the great state of Arizona for 5 minutes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you to our witnesses, and thank you, Ms. Tillman, for everything you and Kevin have done for promoting veterans, and the entire Tillman family is near and dear to me. My first picture I hung up on my office wall was actually one of Pat Tillman, and it's a constant reminder of the sacrifices our military service members make, and it reminds my staff, and I always choose to hire veterans. I prioritize them first and foremost, and as we both know, Arizona's economy is growing. I want to make sure that our employers understand that the veteran pool is the best pool to take for, especially with the growing economy and all the semiconductors coming in. But Ms. Tillman, I got a question for you. What has been your experience working with the Department of Labor with the Navigator program, the ENPP?
Thank you so much for the question. I would like to offer, when we first started 50 Strong as a private small business, as you can imagine, navigating government here in DC was quite complicated for us. I will offer the Department of Labor Vets team was one of the first groups to welcome us in. We have had the privilege of helping to host employer roundtables with then Assistant Secretary Rodriguez, and their team has been incredibly supportive and open to the employer community. Also, as of January of this year, 50 Strong is now an official partner of the DOL ENPP program. Referrals are just now starting to come in for that, but we do certainly look forward to further collaboration with their team. And I'm grateful for their team's efforts to include all types of organizations and employers.
Do you have any other recommendations to make that program better?
My recommendations are, as they would be for any other program, we have to continue to look toward outcomes. And I will applaud the DOL team. They are tracking outcomes of the DOL ENPP program, and I appreciate that.
And what feedback have you received from the 200 employers that 50 Strong works with when it comes to hiring veterans?
It's important to note that the vast majority of those 200 employers are opting into our services at no fee. So of those that are coming, what we always tell them is, if you get value, then please continue to come back. And so, as a small business, we will no longer exist if we are not offering value to all in our community and making sure that we're doing it in a way that's trusted and honored. The feedback that we're hearing from employers is that I just heard a feedback from an employer that came to one 50 Strong event for their first time. They found 2 great candidates and they ended up hiring one of them. And so we're incredibly appreciative to the employers that are coming prepared, offering pathways, and importantly, offering much-needed industry-led career preparation as part of the employment search.
Thank you. And Mr. Lewis, what gaps do you most often see in hiring transition service members versus civilians?
I'd say the gaps that we find, thank you for the question, Representative. I'd say the gaps that we find most often is that they're still looking for the camaraderie that they had while serving. And that's why we've been very diligent in investing in our Veterans Advisory Panel that just led to hearing their challenges, their concerns, and their needs. It's helped shape some of the benefit packages that we put forward, but I think that's it the most. They've rejoined a team at Consumers Energy, but they want to have the same level of esprit de corps that they had in their time in the service. So we're very deliberate about spending time, investing time, and providing that social outlet so that they can feel a little what they had previously.
And how do you provide that?
So our Veterans Advisory Panel has weekly and monthly meetings. We have an annual event where we'll bring everybody together for Veterans Day to celebrate their service. We have outside parties come in and speakers. We continue to invest in the benefits policies. So we have 30 days of paid military leave that's fully paid. We don't require any kind of a gap fill there. We offer 1 year of complete gap fill pay as well. We provide different mental health offerings. It's just being intentional about spending time with veterans, listening to their needs, and finding programs that meet those needs.
And has the feedback been positive from the veterans?
Completely positive. So I think the national average with self-identified veterans is around 7%. We have 12% at Consumers Energy and continue to fill that pipeline. We're intentional about going out and finding that talent.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chairman, I yield back.
The gentleman yields back to chair now, recognizes Ms. Ramirez from the great state of Illinois. My dear friend, ma'am, 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Ranking Member, for holding today's hearing, and thank you for the witnesses that are here. We know that the current attacks on the VA, its workforce, and its funding are alarming. And I personally am deeply concerned about the impacts those attacks will have on all veteran programs and services. However, we know that the unique importance of the Transition Assistance Program has on veteran lives. Having ran a homeless shelter where we served a number of veterans experiencing homelessness, I know that the transition from military service to civilian life is distinct and complex. From employment assistance to mental health services, housing support, and access to continued education, our veterans deserve an integrated, streamlined, comprehensive approach to TAP that recognizes their sacrifices, honors their needs, and also provides them with the necessary tools, the resources, and the support they need so that they can succeed. And while we continue to fight for full funding and staffing at the VA, Given today's conditions, we also have to be particularly aware of programs like TAP that provide essential support at a moment of significant transition in veterans' lives. Instead of recklessly reducing resources and capacity in the VA, which has the potential to impact veteran access to and experience of TAP, we should be instead investing in improvements to the TAP program so that we can meet the diverse needs of our veterans. So I have a couple of questions. Ms. Craig, in your testimony, you shared that you believe transitioning out of the military presents unique challenges. You said that this includes shifts in identity, needing further education, struggling with employment, and overall a lack of support. What additional support do you believe is still needed from our federal agencies, particularly the VA, to ensure that the TAP program equips veterans to successfully reintegrate into civilian life?
Thank you for that question, Congresswoman Ramirez. The VFW believes that the VA is doing the best that they can with the resources that they have at the time. I'm sorry, do you mind rephrasing the question?
What additional support, are there any specific gaps in resources that Congress should be addressing as it pertains to the TAP program?
I wouldn't say necessarily gaps in resources right now. The VFW is highly supportive of the Benefits Delivery at Discharge program, which the VA is gracious enough to allow our representatives to go into that one day of their TAP course. Our BDD reps are able to engage with service members as they're transitioning and link them to the VA at the point of discharge, which we know that when service members get away from the military and don't connect with VA, particularly within that first year, they're even less likely to circle back to the VA, and they miss out on crucial resources and services that the VA provides.
Thank you, Ms. Craig. I want to shift gears now and ask a question to Ms. Carson. Your testimony highlights a key issue that many veterans face: the need for a longer period of planned separation from military service before that 1-year mark. Based on available research, what do you think is a recommended time frame for service members to begin that transition? Additionally, as you're answering that question, how should we account for economic conditions when determining the time frame? For example, if job growth is slowing or if certain industries are seeing layoffs, should we be adjusting the timeline or tailoring resources accordingly?
Thank you for your question, ma'am. This is a great one that has been looked at by TVMI, which I referenced. And they suggest, and we agree, that 1 year prior to separation, it could be extended even more. And it's easy potentially as making information available that's going to be provided at TAP available earlier. And the VA does some of that right now at military. It's part of the military life cycle, being aware of the benefits that are available before you even begin to separate. In terms of being sensitive to economic trends, we do need more data on that. That isn't always available to those of us who are not within the government's data collection resources, and that we could adjust and be more timely if that were provided. One way to do that is to keep a longitudinal study and look in on service members long before they've left service and continue long post-service. And the TVMI would be, again, a great place to start as a baseline for those questions, to see that the 4 domains of health that have been identified are sustained.
Thank you, Ms. Carson. I appreciate that. I mean, I couldn't agree more. We have to improve the system coordination. We need to be streamlining dual enrollment processing, staff up more navigators, and conduct greater outreach for the program earlier. Instead, however, we're trying to stop a staffing purge that will create needless hardship for veterans. The actions of this administration, let me say on the record, are not progress. They are a door to privatization, and they put service members' transition to civilian life in jeopardy, and is shameful.
The gentlelady's time has
yield back,
expired.
Chairman. Thank you.
The gentlelady yields back. The chair now recognizes Representative King Hines from the Northern Mariana Islands for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I made a promise to our local VFW chapter to extend their half a day to the folks here in DC who represent the VFW during these testimonies, and to say thank you on their behalf. So I hear from Ms. Craig and Ms. O'Brien about the importance of providing spouse services, that they're included as part of the TAP program. And I just wanted to kind of hear more on that subject, because I do believe that, you know, when families transition into civilian life, it impacts the entire family. I want to hear your thoughts on what that would look like.
Thank you for the question. First and foremost, for the duration of a military service member's career, if they have a partner, if they are married, the military spouse is expected to come alongside and is a very active participant oftentimes. As we near transition, we find that military spouses are often included only on an opportunity where there is space available for them to push in and to sit in. And the reality is, military spouses carry a huge burden to make a successful transition for the entire family. We also know that military spouse employment, having the opportunity for spouses to go to work 5, 6 years, especially 1 year before transition, has a direct impact on how the service member transitions out and the job that they select. If we have financial stability in the home, it provides the opportunity for the service member to make the right choice and the right fit in terms of employment. And so recommendation is certainly that military spouses are included in TAP, have the opportunity to come alongside, and not only on a space available opportunity.
Thank you for that. I agree. This question is also for you. So you mentioned that in terms of transitioning back into civilian life, one of the issue is not necessarily unemployment, but underemployment. How can we help address that issue?
In terms of what Ms. Carson recommended, beginning that process at least a minimum of a year out in terms of transition. We know oftentimes because we are not plugging military service members into TAP at the right time, it puts them further and further behind, and they are forced then to take a job because there is economic pressure to feed our families, to ensure that there's pathway to economic opportunity. If we can start that process at minimum a year out, and it allows them to figure out what is the right career for them, what skills do they need to acquire, how can they better articulate their soft skills that they bring to employers. Each of those mile markers becomes increasingly more important, and we see those that don't have the time to participate in TAP fully and to participate in SkillBridge end up underemployed over and over again. And so there are programs in place. There are nonprofits that have the ability to fill the gaps where needed and to step forward. And so creating a tighter synergy in that warm handoff is absolutely important, and going back to at least minimum of a year participation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield about my time.
The gentlelady yields back. The chair now recognizes Mr. Barrett from the great state of Michigan. Sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for hosting this committee today, and want to thank the panelists for your time. I know, Ms. Tillman, I think you kind of were explaining through your remarks, it reminded me a little bit of the difference between outputs and outcomes. So the DOD will say, well, we put this many people through this program. This many people went through the TAPS program and did this many briefings and everything else. But we never ask, well, what's the outcome of that? We know how many outputs were done, but the outcome is still uncertain from there. And I think that's got to be a shift in focus of what we do, is less about how many people we run through a program and more about what the outcome of that is and the deliverable for it, for the purpose of the veterans that it's supposed to be benefiting. So I appreciate your acknowledgement of that distinct difference. Also, Mr. Lewis, thank you so much for being here from Michigan. Appreciate the partnership with consumers on the work that you do employing veterans. I know firsthand men and women that I served with in the military who ultimately went and worked at consumers, and I think a big part of what veterans are looking for, whether they consciously think about it or not, is they're looking for their next purpose in life. So they have a distinct purpose in the military. They know that, they can feel it. There's a mission behind what we do every single day. And then as you leave service, I think you want to feel that same sense of purpose, or at least a degree of that. You understand that military and civilian life are going to be different, and they're not going to be entirely exact, but having that sense of purpose is very important. And I'm curious if you had any lessons learned through the program that you're doing along the way that you've been doing it for over a decade now, I believe, of some of how you build that connection through that sense of purpose, perhaps.
Thank you for the question, Representative. Repeating myself, but being intentional about it, like, you got to get started, and I've seen too many employers that just don't get started. So pulling a group of veterans together, we will figure it out for you. We have opinions and we will share them. So I think really being intentional about providing time, getting that group together, hearing their voices. They're going to tell you how to recruit veterans, where you need to look, where we're falling short from a benefits package. And with that, we can make those changes. Veterans bring to the workplace a myriad of skills. They're dependable. They work safe. They show up on time. They execute. They know how to work in a team. If you get us together in a room, we will create the outcomes that are necessary. Just give us space. It is an easy investment for companies to make. And far too often we fall short because we're focused on the task at hand, where we can solve our own problems by getting folks engaged into their own futures.
Do you think that, and thank you for that, do you think that consumers has recognized, look, there's a real purpose behind what your company does, right? It is life critical for, home heating, for electricity, for, all the various things that go into that. Do you feel that that provides a natural fit for veterans to really have a very clear answer of the purpose behind the work that they're doing?
Absolutely. There is a purpose in our work. There's a beginning and an end. There's always a mission as we start the day. We ride into literal storms sometimes to throw up power lines. Veterans connect with that very well because they're used to that. They're used to being in uncomfortable positions for long periods of time because there's people in need, and I think they find a greater outcome, a greater opportunity, a greater mission when they do work like providing energy to their citizens.
Thank you. And the partnership you have with the facility in Potterville that you mentioned, I've toured that facility. I've seen it firsthand, some of the work that they do. When I was in the state legislature, we got them approved for some of the tuition assistance programs that are available to our National Guard men and women there. Can you tell me a little bit about how that has worked from the federal partnership that you described with the Department of Labor?
So shout out to Amber Fogarty. She's my previous co-chair at the Veterans Advisory Panel. She was very intentional with working at the Department of Labor to get 7 different apprenticeship programs recognized. I didn't know that was an option when I was coming out of the service. I didn't think about skilled trades. The fact that you can now take your GI Bill and apply it to those apprenticeship programs and start making significant incomes immediately after service, it's just, again, being intentional. I know the Department of Labor has a program to have apprenticeships recognized. She went through that. I mean, it is a task for businesses to get involved in, but the talent will follow those apprenticeship programs. So again, be intentional about it.
Thank you. And lastly, I'll just say to each of you, thank you again for being here. I think this really demonstrates that work there's a dignity that comes along with working and having that continued mission. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Gentleman yields back. The chair now recognizes myself for 5 minutes again. Hey, I'm going to cover this again. I'm going to ask, Ms. Craig, how much money do you guys get from the government?
Actually, Congressman, I'm not sure.
Ms. O'Brien?
I don't believe any.
We have one solar energy grant from the Department of Energy.
How about from the VA? From the VA? Do you get any money from the VA?
Do we?
Yeah.
No.
Okay. Ms. Carson?
The IVMF receives federal grants from the Small Business Administration and Commerce.
Okay, but not the VA.
Correct.
Correct. Mr. Lewis?
No dollars from the VA.
0. Ms. Tillman?
No dollars from the VA.
Okay, so once
or any
again,
federal
I'm
government
not going to tolerate anybody fear-mongering with my veterans, period. So we had the DOD here, we had everybody here, the VA here. There has not been a single incident that I can find anywhere where there has been even the most minuscule degradation of our ability to provide services or education benefits, medical benefits to our veterans. So knock it off. Write that down. And if any of you hear about any of that, you call me personally. We're not going to tolerate it. I met Elon Musk's #1 person for the VA, not somebody cleaning the toilets. The first words out of his mouth was, "We will never cut our veterans' benefits, period." And I said, "That's great. That was your opener," because mine was going to be, "If you try cutting our veterans' benefits, I'll rip your..." Oh, I almost just seen your chief right there. Okay? We're not going to do it. They're not doing it. We're not doing it. He's not doing it. So knock it off. Period. Done with that. Stupid. Ms. Craig, 11 agencies are involved in the Transition Assistance Program. Is that correct?
I'm sorry, Chairman, you said
like 11 agencies are involved in the TAP?
I believe the number.
Ms. Carson, who said that?
I think the number's higher than that.
Ms. O'Brien and I both said that.
Okay, so 11, how many people? Like, how many people out of these 11 agencies? Full-time equivalents, do we have any idea?
I don't know the answer to that.
Okay, well, it's more than 11, I'm gonna say. So if we have more than 11 agencies involved in something and we have a 52% success rate, that's a failure. And so what we could probably, surmise from this is that more agencies doesn't necessarily mean more better. Okay? That's how enlisted people talk. So what we need to do is make sure across the board, soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, everybody has the ability to go to this TAP program. And here's what's gonna change. Oh, sorry, Mr. Lewis, this is what you were trying to say earlier. You wanna hire veterans because they know where to be, when to be there, what to wear, and they're not high, right? Those are big things. Mr. Pappas is in the restaurant business. He knows what I'm talking about. Okay, nothing's changing here, nothing, until it is on here in a line item that a commissioned officer is held responsible. And let me tell you what I'm talking about. The difference between the retirement pay for an 05, which would be a squadron commander, a SEAL team commander, like a wing commander, the phone colonel. They're like, hey, Colonel Johnson, they're really Lieutenant Colonel, that's a phone colonel. The difference between the pay for an 05 and an 06 retirement is $3,000 a month. Let's hopefully they live, 40 years we did, 30 years? That's $1 million. It's $1 million difference between an 05 and 06 retirement. So if I go to these screwballs and I'm like, hey, dude, you don't have your people going to TAP, it's gonna cost you $1 million. You will have a 100% attendance rate. And that is my intention. So again, E7's making $27,000 annually. These guys are making $78,000 a month annually, 05s, 06s are $96,000 a month retirement. If I tell you right now, if anybody's paying attention here, all you people in charge of stuff, I'm coming for you. I am gunning for you, 05s and 06s. And you blame it on a first sergeant or a master chief? Nope, it's on you. And we will charge you $1 million if you don't use these programs because you're statutorily obligated to do so. I don't have any questions. You guys think I'm joking? I'm not. Okay. Whew. What do veterans bring to the workplace? Anger, apparently. I don't know. So listen, I want to thank y'all for being here today. For both panels, you're awesome. I really appreciate your work. Ma'am, you're killing it. However, Oshkosh is not my district. Sorry, I just got you. You got his right, though. So if there's anything we can do collectively as a committee, we will do it. And I know that's Mr. Pappas' intention. He's a good man. And we're going to do what we can to help you, regardless of your political party affiliation or what you do in your privacy of your own. We don't care. We just want better for our veterans, and I know you do. And I thank you very much. I think you're doing God's work. I now recognize Mr. Pappas for any closing comments that you may have.
No, just a brief thank you. I really appreciate the contributions of this panel. You are all working in your own capacities to help meet the needs of those who wear the uniform of this country and their spouses and family members. We're really grateful for it. I think there's a lot that I learned today from you all and the programs that you run, the way that you open doors of opportunity to veterans. And as I said before, transition assistance has been a work in progress over a lot of years. It can continue to get better, but only if we engage, learn these lessons, and help promote smart policies. And we're all in on that proposition. So thanks very much. I yield back.
The gentleman yields back. I ask unanimous consent that all members have 5 legislative days to revise and extend their remarks and include extraneous materials. Without objection, so ordered. This hearing is now adjourned.